Today I'm going to do a project that features a jelly roll, and you've probably heard of these. It's a Bargello, but it's going to be a Bargello with a twist. So I have this jelly roll right here, and I'm going to use this entire jelly roll. There's not going to be any waste. And then for an alternative fabric to go with it, because I've seen that mentioned as an aspect of jelly rolls, I'm going to use this goldfish fabric that I got. It happens to be a really nice fabric that I think is going to accent with this jelly roll very nicely here. I guess first of all we should open up the jelly roll. This is a 2.5 strip pack that I picked up from the Craft Warehouse. That's like kind of a small chain of stores that's here in the Northwest. So I saw this and I was thinking, oh, I totally want to do a Bargello at some point, because I've never actually done one. I've never done like the traditional style of a Bargello, which this won't be. So I guess I will still keep that intact, never having done that. And I realized, because I bought this in Boise and I live on the other side of the state, I realized after I got this home and I was kind of looking up Bargello designs and stuff, that I wasn't really going to be able to make a pretty good Bargello out of just one jelly roll. And I had only bought the one. So I have had this thing kind of sitting around for months and not really knowing what I wanted to do with it. And then I saw this design where it was using these 2.5-inch strips, and it was using half of the strips and putting them into a strip set, and then the other half of the strips were basically bisecting or perpendicular. And I thought that looked nice, but it was straight up and down. And when I looked at that, also there was kind of some leftovers with that particular design. And when I was looking at that, I was thinking, I think that would look really cool doing that against a Bargello. So this is Wilmington fabric, and it's got a few different blues, a few different greens, and the rest of it is kind of like these neutral cream and beige color type stuff. So what I will need to do is I will need to have one of these strips that I set aside, and then one of these strips is going to get sewn into a strip set, but I need that goldfish fabric here to go into that, and I'm going to cut off of this side over here. Okay. Let's do 3.5. Okay. Because these guys do not go out to 44 inches like they claim on the package. That I think what I'm going to have to do to make this fit right is I am going to take one of these light colors, one of these kind of cream or beige colors out, and I'm going to put the goldfish into that spot. I think this would be a good choice. So that is what I'm going to do. And then that, all of that will go right on top of each other like that. And then extra strip. This can go in my stash. So now for this next step, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make up one big long strip set. So here we are. I have this strip set made up, and with the addition of the goldfish, which is 1 inch larger, it ends up being about 41.5 inches wide here, so that's good for my uses. I did end up having to add a little bit of a piece here, and so that ended up being about 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So I'm going to use that as the first spot where I can make a cut, because what I need to do is I need to get all of this into a tube. So first thing I'm doing here is I am trying to fold this over, and I'm trying to get these to be nice and straight with each other. And oh, also, by the way, it doesn't really matter the direction that you press this in. So I just pressed it all to one side. You could press it open as well, because we're not going to be matching any seams here. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and get this trimmed back so that I can use that. And then I'm just going to look at the marks here, and I'm going to match them up with these seams that I made before I cut. And that way I should be able to have things pretty straight if I do it that way. So we have that, and then what I'll be able to do with that is now I can take this entire thing and I can just try to get that kind of synced up. And then I'm going to go ahead, you can pen this. I'm just going to use my clips, as I find my clips are pretty good for a task like this. And I can just space these pretty far apart, and that works. All right, now I have this sewn up. My edges on this are going to be 1.5, so I have no need to sew this into the tube. This one works just fine as is. So I am going to go ahead and just leave this one alone. And this will be my first one. What I need to do is I need to consult my diagram, and I'm going to cut the first few of these. So one of the things that you will need if you don't want to try to just rip them apart is you need a seam ripper. Definitely get yourself an ergonomic type of a seam ripper. I've had this one for many years and it works great. So what I need is I need another 1.5, and then I'm going to cut 2 2-inch points, and then I'm going to stop there. So I'm just going to do like a few of these at a time and then sew them, and then I can get ready to do a few more and keep going with that. And I'm doing that just so I can keep everything straight. So I definitely have 1.5 inches there. Remember what they said in school, measure twice, cut once. You want to make sure you get these measurements on. I need that, and then I need 2 2-inches. So that's easy enough to achieve here. And it's a good idea to have one of these long rulers, because this does end up being a pretty long piece that you're trying to cut. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to line this up as if it is a Bargello initially, and then it will become a alternative Bargello, or what I'm calling a broken Bargello, after I've gone through and put my strips in, the perpendicular strips. So let's see. So for that, the way you do Bargellos traditionally is you want to have it offset by 1. That means that I need it right there. Another way that I've seen people handle this is they will go ahead and they'll just take scissors and they'll cut it right at the seam line. You're going to lose a little bit of your length if you do it that way, but that is a way of doing it. So it looks like I'm going off to the left here. Doesn't really matter. Just, pick a direction and stick with it for a bit is kind of the thing here. That is where I need the next one. Okay. Oh, that's nice. I like that. So we need it right there. Okay, so I have the first bit here started. I'm going to take each one of these long strips and I am going to start putting them in between, and we will sew them up that way. So like that, and then that one will go with this next one. Okay, ooh, I think this is going to be pretty cool. And then also part of it with not cutting all those strips ahead of time is I'm making this a more manageable project by doing it this way. And so I need this one over here. I am going to end up sewing like these two, and then these two, and then these two, and then these two. All right, I have these strip sets all nice and sewn up. Looking at this, it would be a little bit difficult to try to make sure that everything is straight up and down if you just get sewing on it, because of course these edges are all uneven. So the way to get that to happen is that you want to take this, okay, and you're going to just slide it down. So take that right there, okay? Then you just want to slide it down until you can kind of see where it's matching up. So you see where that's lining up there. And then now that I have that lined up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pin. And then that is going to be how that works out. And then I can just kind of spot check it further down, and it looks like everything is lining up. And then I'm ready to sew these up. All right, I have these two duos, and I have the strip set that I worked on before, and so that will line up and look like that, and so you can see how it's starting to come back. So I'm going to continue with this kind of 2x2 type of thing, and I'll just be kind of weaving a bit of a wave, an irregular wave going through the piece, and so we'll see what this looks like when I get done with all of this. Okay, now I have the big reveal, And here it is. I think this turned out really, really well. It just has like a nice curve going all the way up and down through it. You could do your curve a little bit differently if you wanted to. It's totally nice and customizable that way to the way you want it, because it all is based on where you decide to take apart the strip set that you've cut for the Bargello. And so this is the way that I'm intending to have it. I think that even though this would conventionally be a little bit narrow for a throw quilt for the couch, I think it'll work for me just fine. And then the length of this, so this ended up being about 41 inches wide. The length of it is about 72 inches long, so it's kind of a long quilt. If you wanted to shorten that up, you could. Just simply do less of the cross strips, and you'll have a little bit more waste on the Bargello part of it, but it'll work fine. So that's how it looks that way. And then I just want to kind of show how it would look this way as well, because maybe that direction is more your style, especially if you wanted to have a particularly large wall hanging for a nice wall in your place. So either way works really great. I hope that this is a project that interests you. You're free to go ahead and click the link in my description. I will have a pattern there available for a very nominal purchase. It's more like kind of tipping the creator, really. You're welcome to leave comments. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching.